Hey guys, Sorin here. So I've just switched to using Ubuntu as my main OS. Now let's talk about that, but first of all, this is not a Ubuntu versus Windows 10 comparison or stuff like that. I'm not saying that Ubuntu or Linux in general is much better or anything else. This is just my story about my experience as a programmer and sysadmin on using Ubuntu and Windows for a couple of years, and why I've decided to stick with Ubuntu for good. So first of all, I have been using Ubuntu seriously. A couple of years ago, it was 2014 or something like that. Ubuntu was at 14.04 LTS version, and it was pretty good, but I wasn't quite that amazed with it, and Windows was doing anything I needed. So I just stuck on Windows and had a dual boot with that version of Ubuntu. But recently, a couple of weeks ago, I've just tried in a VM Ubuntu 20.04 LTS, the latest Ubuntu version. And I must say it's pretty neat. They have worked a lot on it, and it's much better. It feels smoother. Even the interface is sleek and easy to use. So while Linux in general is known as being an OS that you need to use a terminal and stuff like that, you shouldn't be scared of that. But with the latest Ubuntu, it's not the case anymore. So it's very friendly even for day-to-day activities and tasks and normal operations like browsing, watching videos on the internet and stuff like that. So what made me make the switch? First of all, I don't miss anything on Windows. I just realized that I don't need to stay on Windows. As I'm not doing any Adobe work, I still work with some software like Adobe Photoshop or Premiere once every other week, but it's not critical or intensive stuff, and usually I don't even have to do anything on them. So that was one of the reasons on staying with Windows, and the other one was, of course, games. Everyone likes to unwind after a long week and in the weekends play some games. Now, the second reason was that I'm not missing anything. For example, I was using VS Code, Termius, FileZilla a lot, Notepad++, and all this stuff exists on Linux, and they work very well. Mind you, for FileZilla, the dark theme on Ubuntu looks amazingly better than on Windows. Just my opinion. Now, the other aspect was that I already had a proper terminal, the Ubuntu terminal. And over the years, as we've gotten to work on a lot of servers and VPSs that obviously are running Ubuntu Server or CentOS, I've literally had to learn by repetition obvious commands and usual commands. So it was getting annoying on Windows with several emulators of great, I can say they were bad software, but they are not just there like on a Linux machine. It just comes out of the box with Linux and it's a lot better. Mind you, I still use Termius because I can have everything saved, all of my clients, and with 2 clicks I just log in SSHly to their server and I'm there, I can start working, so that's very convenient. Now, the other thing is security. Of course, Linux is focused on security a lot more, but I wouldn't count down as a too strong point, because if you have a little bit of common sense and you have a security suite installed on Windows, you're pretty much settled. You probably won't have any problems. Now, performance is another thing. Sure, Windows 10 is pretty polished. It works pretty great, except when it's updating and breaks stuff. But the other times it works decently. But in Ubuntu and in Linux in general, you just throw everything at it and it will still work properly. Of course, this means you need to have a properly configured Ubuntu. I always use, for example, a swap partition. Even if my machine has 16 gigabytes of RAM, sometimes it's handy to have something like that, especially if you are the kind of person that opens up everything and has it open the whole day. A lot of Firefox tabs, Chrome tabs, VS Code instances, Terminus to the hell and back, and whatever. So it just runs smoothly. You have to try it to see it, everything flows better. And the last thing that pushed me to actually how this whole thing started of trying Ubuntu 20 was the fact that I have a wireless mouse, a Logitech MX Master, the first revision. And in Windows, after some update, or I can't really track, but as far as I recall, the issue appeared on point with a Windows update. Sometimes, but just sometimes, the mouse just has a mind of its own. It acts like it's skipping, lagging, or briefly disconnecting. Mind you, it's running via the wireless dongle. Now I have tried using the back ports of the motherboard, all the type, the USB 3, everything. And the front panel. Nothing has changed. So after getting fed with it one weekend afternoon, as it was really causing me some havoc, like you were trying to drag and drop a file, let's say to FileZilla, and you will just drop the file and double click somewhere else or something like that, and that's pretty dangerous. So I just said, okay, let's check if it's a hardware problem. How can we easily check that? Well, easily. Just let's boot into a live installation of the latest Ubuntu, just to check, for the lols. So I spent the whole day in that Ubuntu instance and nothing happened. I mean, the mouse ran perfectly. Mind you, I did not do anything. I didn't even select the proper driver for the NVIDIA GPU. I was just sitting there watching YouTube videos and unwinding after a long week. So after seeing this, I decided to try again a couple of days and everything was smoother. So I double booted with Ubuntu, the latest version. That's how I got back into Ubuntu, sort of say, as I was only using it in command line. Now I'm using the full desktop version and it's pretty awesome. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses. What I really don't like about this latest Ubuntu, well, it has some features called snaps. I get it. It's easier to install apps. It's amazing. You can find in 3 clicks you have a new piece of software installed. But I feel that it's doing something wrong. Don't get me wrong, I've tried it. I installed VS Code as a snap and the classic way. And the snap version just starts very slow. You can literally time it. It takes a couple of good seconds before it starts, while the normal installed version, the deb package, just starts immediately. So as long as an alternative to install the good old-fashioned way, anything you want, I'm pretty fine with that, but I'm not a fan. Another thing is Wine. Sure, Wine is great. It can help you run software made for Windows on Ubuntu, but it's not so reliable that you could actually say, okay, I'm gonna ditch Windows forever if you have an app that runs only on Windows, and keep Wine. So knowing this, I'll probably have a dual boot instance, and for games of course, forever. A smaller partition with Windows 10 and some games, and the Adobe apps that don't play so good with Wine. But apart from these two things, I really can't comment. It's not a bad OS, it's really cool, even for users that are not yet into programming, into trying the terminal or wanting to try it. You can literally use Ubuntu 20.04 as a day-to-day machine to write, to do everything you want. So some closing thoughts would be, if you want to try Ubuntu, make sure to try it as a virtual machine first or as a dual boot. But if you're not, I don't know, if you're scared to try dual boot or something, but there really is, it's not really that hard and there are no downsides. Try a VM for a couple of days, act like that is your main OS and see how it works. If you like that, go ahead and install it. I mean, apart from some games, but the cases are so and so. Some games work with Wine, some even are made for Linux, but you can any day keep a dual boot and your Windows 10 OS will run just as before as if you've never used Ubuntu. But nonetheless, it's a great way to start working with the terminal, getting your hands dirty and just trying out and learning new stuff. I'm still learning new stuff, as we all do, and I must say I love it, and the handy terminal is a godsend compared to Windows 10. So if you like this video, if you'd like to see more stuff of how it's done or something like that on Ubuntu, or why not on CentOS, we have a local development server over here that's running CentOS 7 for quite a while. Leave a comment, give this channel a like and a subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.